the Cayman Islands.
Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today. If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Another terrific Tuesday's edition of Talk Today. Even better because we got some great things in store for you. You want to know how diet, nutrition, and all the good things that you're supposed to be doing that you know that you're not, how it affects the brain chemistry, and neurotransmitters, and even words that I can just barely say. Well, we got Dr. Cotton and Dr. Borden join us, and we're going to get you informed, involved, included, engaged, entertained, and if the day goes as planned, you'll leave a smile. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255. Courtesy of Flow,
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for joining us. Thanks for the love, the laughter, and the life that is in our lives. And many times we're reminded, either when we read Shakespeare, that if music be the food of love, play on. But we're told we are what we eat. I guess I'm made of chocolate, but maybe even sweet. Who knows? Really appreciate, from one course came on Dr. Alexandra Borden and her colleague Dr. Jennifer Cotton, two licensed professional psychologists joining us and explaining, helping us to understand and appreciate that our bodies are indeed our temples. We need fuel for our vehicles, whether it's solar charged electric vehicle, whether it's diesel or gas or some other sort of propellant that moves us forward. But we so likewise need it for our bodies as well. And we may eat and be sluggish after, that thing that we can't say no more that sets into some cultures after they have a long meal of, anyway. But Dr. Borden, good afternoon, and thank you and to your colleague Dr. Cotton for accepting this, personal invitation to join us again. At this time of year, we're going to eat a lot, hopefully. Cassava cake, custard top, cornbread, and turtle. I'm thinking about it now, baby. But good afternoon. Maybe initially your thoughts and Dr. Cotton's relative to the food and its impact, diet, nutrition, exercise, sleep, the things that we probably don't get enough of, maybe too much of us at some time. So I'm looking forward to the discussion.
No, thank you very much for the invitation for today. And I think this is a very timely conversation with all of the holidays coming. I know we had, so my mom's American, we had Thanksgiving last week. And I know we've got a whole series of Christmas parties lined up, and then there's the New Year's Eve parties, and so there's a lot of things coming up. And Caymanians are always based around food. Even the American holidays are based around food. There's a lot of food in the holidays, so I think this is a very timely discussion to have. Proud to have Dr. Cotton having joined our practice recently, specializing with eating disorders, and has a great. So she actually did a guest lecture for my class the other day as well on the eating disorders and how food impacts our mood and all of the neurochemistry, just like you were referring to. So she's a great addition to our practice, but also to the island. So thrilled to have her on today to give us some guidance on a better understanding of how our food and diet and our nutrition affects
All right. Well,
our brain and our mood.
Thanks so much, Dr. Cotton. Dr. Cotton, with that, I think we need to appreciate that what we put into our bodies affects us long term, but even now. And how many times have we had something to eat or drink and we're restless, we're energized, we're psyched, and we're not quite sure, even when we do know that maybe that 5th cup of coffee, probably shouldn't have happened, but we still take it, right? But what about our children? We give them things that we think are healthy, but we're not sure, or we give them things that we have, let's say, dyes and the like. So I reached out to a fellow parent. Is that a great word to put here? And she was saying that it took her a long time to understand that this particular treat that she would seek out for her daughter never realized the impact that it had on the child 2 years down the road. Her energy levels were up a lot after consuming this treat that the mother lovingly, willingly, and sometimes with great financial sacrifice procured for the loved one. So food can be your fuel or it can be your demise, huh?
Absolutely.
All right, well, let's get it to be your fuel.
Yeah. And I mean, I think the basics are really important, like eating regularly, eat carbs, fat, and protein. You know, if you're having a large meal for a holiday, don't skip meals. Like, that's not going to be helpful. You're not really saving yourself anything.
All right. If it's okay, and I say this to our listening audience, that I'm guided by much information you shared, I think oftentimes we think if we hit on our devices, our favorite search engine, that is synonymous with research. It is. We get to read a lot, and sometimes we don't, what's a little learning is a dangerous thing. But maybe start with it. We see this so-called food pyramid. Now, I personally never subscribed to it, never quite understood it, never thought how that would be one size fits all. Then I stumbled upon, fungus. Maybe that should be another aspect to it. Then you started going down what couldn't, almost invariably become a rabbit hole. What about this? What about that? But even the basics, you talk about carbs and all these things, and the people going, carbs? I'm not a bodybuilder, I'm not carb loading, but we still need it. So
yes,
what are some of the things that we should be considering first and foremost with a healthy diet, as it were, and then specifically, what would I have relative to the impact on our waistlines, but mostly our brain capacity, our rest, and as well as that level of intuitiveness, as it were.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know carbs has been kind of a dirty word in the last several years.
Carbs, politicians. Oh, sorry.
But the reality is our brains need carbs to function. Like, we cannot function without carbs. So you need that combined, though, with fat and protein. We can't just eat all carbs, or it raises our blood sugar, so we have that spike of energy that you're talking about, and then we crash.
Okay.
So we need the protein and the fat to even out the carbs, and that's part of why you combine all the nutrition together. So, and it's super important that every meal we should be having carbs, protein, and fat.
Okay, so like for those, and then we understand that they are different, and if I use the word fad incorrectly or inappropriate, let me know, but these things come along. Oh, have you subscribed to the latest X diet?
Yeah.
Or there are people who say, well, I don't have carbs, or I'm vegan, vegetarian, I am whatever. I learned a new word about 4 or 5 years ago, pescatarian.
Pescatarian.
And I go, is that like a pescatarian? No. But there are all these combinations that we think are healthy, and then we go back to our parents and grandparents, and they ate anything and everything, but it was sourced from the ground right in the backyard or in the North Sound in our case.
Right.
And they lived to be 100 plus and very healthy mentally and physically.
Yeah.
So what was the trick?
Yeah. I mean, I think the trick was like their food was real food. And most of what we're eating is not real food. It's packaged food with all sorts of chemicals put into it. And yeah, there are a lot of fad diets out there. Keto, intermittent fasting, I think vegetarianism, veganism, ovo, lacto, all these things that people are doing. But if we're eating food, like food at its basic, like that's healthy and that's nourishing our bodies.
So then from that perspective, even Dr. Bott, I would imagine like everything is culturally specific. So I harken back to a presentation I saw probably several decades ago. I may not look it, but I've been on a few decades. this physician from Hawaii, was it Oahu, one part of that, and he was saying that, having school on the mainland, I thought, on the BRAC, he was some part in New York or elsewhere, and in that traditional teaching, he decided, well, this must be good. After many years of practice, he goes back to Hawaii, and he realizes that many of his former classmates, a lot of the natives, as it were unhealthy, and they were suffering from diabetes, hypertension, all of the things that he saw back in on the main sort of big part of the country. And then he started to consider that they had moved away from their traditional diets and the things that were unhealthy. So I looked at the Cayman context. Well, coconut oil, we used everything, coconut milk off the tree, and we had cassava and all of the the root vegetables. And then he got sort of a study prepared with his patients and had them eat the traditional foods that were considered unhealthy, and weight loss, energy levels went up, their hypertension and cholesterol and all of the markers that were up and bad were coming down. So for the Cayman context, turtle, conch, all those things, at some point we were told, don't eat those, but maybe specifically we need to be considerate.
Well, I think it's important to keep traditions alive, but it's all about balance, right? It's not going to be getting rid of any of it, but maybe looking at getting. I know if you do your plate like me, it's mainly rice with a little bit of conch and stuff on top, and lots of gravy, lots of the stew part. So I think it's going to be about balance, but I do think, but those go back to a lot of it is vegetables and fruits, and the plantain and the breadfruit and the cocoa.
It's lunchtime,
the green banana. So yes, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, it's a lot of bread kinds, which they're. If depending on what your goals are, if it is to be healthy, then that's going to be different than if it's weight loss. But doing anything in a healthy way is going to be what's most important. I think, not cutting out any one thing.
All right. So when we come back from the break, Dr. Cotton, if I may ask you, because I think many times, just as Dr. Borden was sharing, we can see maybe a specific goal. We want to lose weight. We want to perhaps gain more endurance, stamina, muscle mass, because that is the exercise routine that we're about. But what is it that is doing to our brains? And as you go into the break, I was told way back when, maybe I misunderstood, maybe I misheard, the brain needs sugar. You said, we need carbs to the brain, and then I understand about oil. So are there particular things, including sugar, whatever that's defined, that the brain needs to keep the brain lubricated and functioning? And then what are the impacts of all of the foods, the different groups, the different types of foods that we eat that would have? Could we start with that discussion after the break?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. There's going to be a test after this, okay? So put your number 2 pencil, no erasers, or as we used to say in West Bay, no rubber out. And when we come back, more talk today.
Freedom, Cayman BRAC. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
Cayman, our borders are open. It's time to welcome back families, friends, visitors, and for our communities and businesses to thrive again. Now we need to be patient with each other and work together to keep our islands safe. Get familiar with government guidance. Get vaccinated or your booster and a supply of lateral flow tests. Countries all over the world are coexisting with COVID-19. We can too. Join the Ready to Reopen movement at reopencayman.com.
Watch and listen to win big this Christmas with a Digicel Prime bundle. Stream all the music you want in the music. Binge Christmas movies in PlayGo. Watch NBA games in Sportsmax, all while on the go without using any of your data. That's more entertainment, more data, plus more chances to win from thousands of prizes. Enter to win the grand prizes of $10,000 cash, $5,000 cash, or a Digicel family pack with 4 smartphones and free service for a year. Claim your guaranteed prize every Saturday. Buy a 7-day Prime Plus bundle for $20 today. Digicel, better together this Christmas.
I've got some beautiful clothes. I know just where they go. Good and cleaners.
It's that time of the year, and we are ready to help you with your household cleaning needs. And that is bedspreads, comforters, duvets, duvet covers, drapes, and more. All items at 10% off prepay, and turnaround time will be 2 to 3 days. Orders can be handled at all 3 stores. Elgin Avenue, 949-2452. Savannah Countryside, 946-1884. And Eastern Avenue, drive-through Rain or Shine, 949-7104. That's 949-7104. All stores close at 5:30 p.m. Monday through Saturday. Puritan Cleaners. You feel good when you look good.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And if you want to be a part of a discussion, of course, the phone lines are available to you, 949-8037, or a Flow toll-free call at 1-800-534-8255. In the studio, One Course Cayman, Dr. Alexandra Borden and Dr. Jennifer Cotton. And I joke and jest, but I think we all understand how foods affect us. Now, in saying foods, I want to include not only that thing that we eat, chew, and swallow, or some of us just swallow, but the thing that we drink, whether it's the tea, a good friend likes, some turmeric, as she calls it, and ginger. But that morning daily caffeine intake that we get, whether from a fizzy pop or whether it's from that thing that we hotly brewed. But sometimes it's just a good piece of chocolate, lots of caffeine. But then there are meals that we consciously consume. So just before the break, Dr. Cotton, we were asking about it. And I maybe preface it by saying that many of us don't even realize what we're doing to our bodies and to our brains as we consume those things that we routinely consume. Mm-hmm. So some considerations perhaps you could share with us?
Yeah, well, I know right before the break we were talking about sugar, and it's actually our brains need glucose, which is a carbohydrate broken down. Sugar, like we think of like cane sugar, is more like a drug, and it's actually 200 times more addictive than cocaine.
Can you say that again?
Sugar, 200 times more addictive than cocaine when we look at functional MRI studies. And it lights up the same dopamine center that if we were to snort cocaine gets lit up in those fMRIs.
Wow. And I ask you only with the greatest respect to repeat that because I've heard other professionals like you, MDs, PhDs, PSYDs, who have shared this same thing. And the first time I heard it, I thought, really? And yet, as parents, you need a little more sugar, not juice, not tea, as we're taking ourselves. So there's a level of addiction.
Yes.
Okay. And then sugar obviously creates not just weight gain, but other problems for us long term as well, debilitating consequences.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it can. But thinking like a sugar that's in bananas is not the same as a sugar in soda. Like these are not the same kind of sugars.
200 times more addictive than cocaine. I thought I was thinking, I don't know what will. Now, what about oils for some reason? I've heard, the brain needs oils, to.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Yeah, it needs fat. So omega-3s are really important for brain development, not only in children, but in adults as well. And if you think about our brains function with electrical activity that's communicating by sheaths of fat.
The myelin sheaths that you
yes.
see? Okay.
Yep, the myelin sheaths. So they're made of a fatty substance, so the electrical current can go down them. So we need fat to keep those well sheathed so they function properly. So we can't just no fat.
Okay. So then, as I think back to somewhat genuinely believing that we're going to be healthy by taking away certain things, maybe carbs and other things, we may see initially a weight loss. We fit into our nice, dresses. I have my black dress ready. Just kidding. It's red. But we're probably doing something to our brains, and then our brains are probably kind of important, I think.
Yeah, they're kind of important. We kind of need them.
More of us should probably engage them before we open our mouths, but that's a different story. But yet, we inadvertently and maybe unknowingly impacting our long-term health. Could that then lead to things like memory loss, other similar issues, we think to Alzheimer's and the like, because we have inadvertently, not supplied the brain with sufficient nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been some theories about Alzheimer's and some of the other neuro diseases because of the whole low-fat like movement. Like, did we damage a whole generation of brains?
And even though, we're not necessarily speaking to, say, a registered dietitian and the like, some of us would think, well, that's the purview of those. But as a trained psychologist, you would appreciate that as patients, as people, as individuals, how we're affected and impacted by, what we do, how we do it. No one would consciously, disagree with the studies and the concerns of certain contact sports that they're now having on those former athletes because of the constant mashing of brains and heads, even they're maybe helmet and protected.
Yeah.
But yet, what about that individual now who has decided, for religious or other reasons, not to eat certain things, not to have meats in their diet, not to have this? Consequences long term for the vegan, the vegetarian, the other person? We won't know until maybe 50 years.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there are some things with, especially being vegan, sometimes vegetarianism, like meat has certain vitamin Bs that are broke down by hydrochloric acid in our stomachs. And if you're not eating that meat, you don't have the breakdown of that, and that then can't go to your brain. So for, lifestyle choices like that, it's important just to supplement. But not only to supplement, but to have your blood tested to make sure the supplements are actually doing something. Because sometimes they're not.
Well, that's the thing. So I wrote down supplements, and then to help me today, I spoke to a couple of friends. And one friend, she says her husband introduced her to a word, vegan face. I thought, I know two-faced, but what's vegan face? I didn't know, but apparently, it starts to look aged when you're on a vegan diet. And
so because of lack of collagen,
collagen
probably.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Then another friend, he said to me, well, the idea of vitamin D and calcium and how they interact. So I started to ask today about that. And then vitamin K. So in right now, supplements, we take these supplements. Sometimes we spend extra money that we can't afford buying what we think is the better one, ingesting it, but it does no good because we're not taking the blood test. So when we go to our physicians then for that, hopefully a regular checkup, should we also be asking about our vitamin levels or mineral levels and the like?
I mean, ideally, yes, especially vitamin B and vitamin D.
Okay.
And they not only impact our immune systems, but they impact our mental health. Lack of vitamin D can create a lot of depressive symptoms. And sometimes people supplement and then they're fine.
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D, yeah.
D as in donut. No, sorry. But vitamin B as well. We see the energy levels sometimes.
It's important for memory. It's important for energy and motivation. Like vitamin B is really important for our health.
All right. In looking at those supplements, and we probably, maybe because we're a little bit older and a little bit wiser, maybe because we're a little bit more financially predisposed, we acquire those. But then we understand that a young child, the brain develops early, and after a certain, 5 or 7, they're pretty much where they're going to be brain-wise?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
it's important functioning is happening clear up until 25, and our brain is constantly working on itself.
I'm only joking just for the people who will start to appreciate that this is serious in the laughter there is. But why I say that is that we are appreciative that the foods we eat are no longer whole foods like our parents and grandparents ate, or even we ourselves. There are a lot of processed foods we're giving to our children because of the convenience, the cost factor, and they may be not getting sufficient nutrition. So that young child, we should then also be considering supplementing them with some of these vitamins, the B's, the D's, the K's, the full alphabet.
Again, I think like having your doctor do a blood test to check nutrition levels, especially if you're seeing some symptoms of fatigue or lack of motivation or depression.
Okay, even cognitive function, the
yes.
ability to. In asking that, then going back to the notion of interactions, I think this is where the discussion with your physician, consultation with your dietitian, but your psychologist as well, to appreciate the whole health approach to our foods, but its impact on our bodies. In that, are there particular things that maybe as we look at mood and our approach to foods that we would probably see at the outset, a change in our moods, perhaps a change in our behavior, perhaps a change in even our recall or attention that could be indicative of the impacts of foods on our bodies?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you need omega-3s to help not only with mood, but with concentration, focus. Again, vitamin B helps with energy levels. Like, it's hard to say, like, how the whole package can make someone, act or have some problems, but I think that's, again, why it's important to consult with your physician first. Like, they're a good touch point. Yeah. Like, something is wrong. Can you do this kind of lab work?
Well, what is it? Sorry, Dr. Warden.
That's okay. I'll just add there that I know I've spoken to several GPs on Island, and actually my son's pediatrician as well, who said that the Island actually, they see low vitamin D levels very commonly in Cayman, which it also comes from sunshine, so that's a bit ironic. But that's why it's important to have that understanding, and that's why whenever we do an intake with anyone before we give a mental health diagnosis, we always find out, what are you eating, how's your diet, caffeine intake, alcohol intake, because all of those things affect our mood not only in the moment but chronically as well. And so it's important to have an idea, because sometimes we don't ask those questions. If someone on 10 coffees looks like they have an anxiety disorder, right? Someone with a drinking problem might look sad or depressed or be sleeping a lot, or have high emotions, right? ADHD can come from too much sugar, too much caffeine. So, so ADHD symptoms, not ADHD itself, sorry. Just be clear with that. But that's where, all of this kind of comes in together. But the physician's a great start point to look for all of this. But then that's part of our job as well, is kind of looking at those factors. And it's hard to make changes. The physician can tell you, well, you need to eat more fats and eat more of this. We can be helpful with supporting in that area.
And this is why I appreciate psychologists you guys share with us, because I think too many times we're not appreciative of the resources that are available, the importance of accessing those resources, and the interplay of everything in together. We talk about a holistic approach, but it's only lip service in many instances, or inclusion, but again, just lip service. So that food, what is it they say? If you don't make food your medicine becomes your food, and only short term. To think that we live on an island, yet how many of us are vitamin D deficient? Maybe we, for some reason, consciously staying at the sun because we don't want skin cancer or whatever the impact is, or B, maybe we're getting sun, but for whatever reason, the interaction with the other stuff in our body. Because vitamin D in itself, are there other things that we need? I reference to my friend, vitamin D, calcium, and vitamin K, the interplay between them. Right? So we need to understand what is happening. I guess back to the brain and its interaction.
Yeah, I mean, not only what is happening, do we have the right combination of things to absorb the nutrition, because that's really important, but maybe are there things that we're taking or doing that are also impacting absorption? Like, for example, antacids. If you're taking a lot of antacids, then you're not breaking down that vitamin B in the way that you need to be, and maybe that's part of the problem.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, because then we are taking these things, but we also doing other things that negating the beneficial.
The body is like the body and the brain are like a big soup. Just all affects everything else. I think that's one of the biggest factors, is kind of connecting it, because sometimes you wouldn't think about things like an antacid affecting energy levels. So that's where kind of having that bigger picture can be helpful.
So what would that be like? Because I'm thinking, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm looking forward to the fun, the food, the fellowship that's coming from the festive season. And hopefully this year I will be like conscious of the other years. Eat a lot of cassava cake, but cut back on other things, right? Be conscious of what we're eating so that we are smart and be able to enjoy it. But there are those of us who are going to deliberately engorge because, you know what, this is that time of year. And others going to say, you know what, this is that time of year and I'm going to deliberately avoid certain things. Nobody having that healthy balance. So how do we get to that place where, back to the plate, you know, carbs, protein, fats, all other things? Knowledge, information, education?
Yeah. And I mean, like, I practice in the eating disorder world with something called intuitive eating, mindful eating. And the basis of that is we eat when we're hungry, we stop when we're full, and 80% of what we eat is nutritious and 20% is kind of whatever. And I think just following that on a day-to-day basis is helpful because it's not like we have to cut out everything that tastes good.
Thank heavens.
Not all things that taste good are bad for you, right? So that Pareto effect, 80-20 rule, could work. And then the intuitive part. Now, I think my daughter shared with me that perhaps ADHD could be one of the things why when we're eating, we don't realize that we're full. We just compulsively eat. If that was what she said to me, I wasn't sure I understood. But could that be part of it? Sometimes we have some reasons that we're just eating, we're not even understanding.
Distracted eating is a big problem.
Okay.
And that's one of the things because you're doing something else and not paying attention because the intuitive eating is about paying attention to your hunger cues because a lot of us miss it because we're on our phone, because we're watching TV. You know, if you're watching a show, how you eat so much more versus if you're actually sitting down and focusing on the meal and enjoying it. But other things can get in the way of that as well. So other things can get in the way of that as well. If we're distracted, it can be an issue.
So I did sort of like a personal experiment in preparing for this show over a couple of days, with different meals. Sat in different places that I normally and instead of sitting at the table with the chair as best as I could, I would sit in the sofa. And so the way the body was positioned to the side, slouched over. I don't know if it was because I was conscious of doing it, that I was aware of it, or because I was conscious of doing it, I was aware of it. You could see the food almost going down differently, resting differently. I thought, how many of us watch TV and we're laying back and we just pop in that food? What does that do for digestion? Not just the calorie intake that we eat more, but what the eating, where you're eating, with whom you're eating, that distracted eating affects our whole body. Now, we have Miss Susan distracted for almost 5 minutes. Got to take that break. When we come back, we'll continue the discussion, the impact of our foods on our bodies, and in particular our brain and the neurotransmitters. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Savannah Pharmacy. Shop local and get a head start on your Christmas shopping. For ladies' handbags, clothes, shoes, fragrance, candles, and cosmetics with the newest Farmhouse Fresh line of skincare. For the gentlemen, clothes, shoes, fragrances, gift sets, and toys and games for the kids. Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs. And convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
Do you know how well your pension plan performed? Attend the Chamber Pension Plan's annual general meeting to stay informed and find out how you can achieve your desired retirement lifestyle. Members are invited to meet our trustees and take part in our question and answers segment on 1st December 2021 at 6:30 p.m. at the Chamber of Commerce Boardroom in Governors Square. Refreshments will be served. Please visit our website chamberpension.ky or email admin@pensions.ky for further details. The Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce Pension Plan. We're here for you.
The Ministry of Education invites eligible Caymanians to apply for overseas government scholarships for the 2022-2023 academic year. To apply for an overseas government scholarship or learn more about the various scholarship programs, please visit the recently upgraded scholarship application portal at www.moescholarships.gov.ky. Applications close on Monday, 31st of January, 2022.
Talk today.
But I do have some questions.
Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for joining us. Thanks to Alexandra Borden. As we would say, Lexi? No. Dr. Alexandra Borden.
That's me too.
And I say it publicly, not just for our monthly mental health matters, but for you always being willing to come on and share so that through knowledge and education, we are, what has probably become a cliche, empowered, but I want people to take it on board. Be our best selves, be our champions. And to our colleague over at OnCourse Cayman, Dr. Jennifer Cotton, food fuels the body. It certainly does a lot now we're seeing for our minds and our state of mind, our mental wellness, our health, but our brain is capacity and the like. And you shared, remind us how addictive sugar, as we know it, that added sugar in, our drinks that we consume, 200 times more addictive than cocaine, crack cocaine, and all that stuff. Would not think that. How many of us added to our, our drinks? We bought a sweet tea. Oh, it's not sweet enough. Can I get a pound of sugar, please? So it affects us. Then, as a parent, the child just consumed this sugary drink or sweet, and the child is bouncing off the walls. Well, sit down, little Johnny, behave. No, Mommy, I can't. I'm over the hedge.
Yeah.
So, okay. I'm sorry. She's not. What then, and how do we look at those sort of lifestyle changes? And then the neurotransmitters and all these other things. We heard words like dopamine and the like, and probably know some of it, but then there are corresponding consequences of our foods on our brains, not just our waistlines. So what do we do? And how do we go about it to make that positive impact?
I mean, I think you start with one meal. One meal you make mostly food, not out of a box. Not something packaged, but you just make it food. And it can be any meal.
Okay.
And it can be super simple. Like, it doesn't have to be complicated. You don't need meal prepping. You don't need, hours and hours of cooking. You could do a smoothie. I mean, a smoothie is a really easy thing to have raw food put together, with a lot of nutrition.
So try to buy healthy foods, but also consciously know what you're buying. But then what about the combinations, not just the taste, but the combinations? I won't ask us. Certainly, I'll be, grateful if we share it, but I'm not expecting it. Sometimes for those who, for previous health issues, may be on certain medications, and then as you read, maybe listen to your physicians, they'll say, well, you're taking this particular, medication. These are the fruits and vegetables may be high. Kale, I think, is in vitamin K, for instance. Be careful how this impacts this. So we should know those things and talk to our physicians as well.
Yes.
So we're not impacting ourselves unconsciously in a negative way.
Yeah, definitely educate yourself.
Wow. Now, what about that person who's listening, who's starting out in the smoothie, for instance? I don't have a problem with, coconut milk, coconut water with some kale and some carrots and some turmeric and stuff, blend it up. Now, I don't know what it's going to do, but it tastes good. There are others going, kale and that? Ugh.
Yeah.
But you have to try something, right?
Sure, yeah. And I mean, it doesn't have to be kale, but you can put kale in a smoothie and you can barely taste it. So it's like a good thing. But it's that like a protein, a carb, and a fat.
Okay.
And
protein, a carb, and a fat.
Yeah. And make sure you're getting all of those. So maybe that's, peanut butter and a banana and some coconut milk.
So then it sounds like we need to now go back for those who don't understand what foods fall in what categories. Protein, well, I think chocolate is the complete meal. It has so, because it's everything, right? So combining those together always would be the key.
Yes.
And then the fats could take a form of oils as well as other ways.
Yeah, I mean, fats are in fish, fats are in nuts, fats are in coconut milk. Yeah, there are lots of ways. Fat. Like vegetable oil is not really considered a good fat.
No.
So it's really different. Yeah, so you're looking for those healthy fats, your olive oils, your coconut oils, your nuts, your fish.
When you say coconut, I think immediately to medium chain triglycerides, for instance. So should we understand that and know how that plays into, or should we just lead that to the professional like you and understand the balanced nutritional diet that we should be pursuing?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we don't need to make it too complicated, especially when we're just starting.
Okay.
You know, like coconut oil is a good fat. Like that's all.
It's good for you in every way. So I'm told from my friends in the back.
I think keeping it simple is the easiest way to stick with it as well.
Okay.
When you try to do major overhauls, that's when you run into a lot of difficulties. It's not sustainable. You're not enjoying it. It's too complicated. So I think, with any of the things we've talked about, any kind of behavior change, like, Dr. Cotton said, it's do one meal. Start with that, whether it's a smoothie or a healthy dinner. Find stuff you like. You're not going to like some stuff. Kale may or may not be an option. I've got a few friends that hate kale. I also agree, put it in a smoothie. You can't taste it. You just get all the vitamins. But it's going to be, taking the time to understand things and understanding the impact that our mood has on our food as well and our food choices, right? Because it goes both ways. And so that would be the other side. We talked about the mindful eating, is being aware of our emotions and how that's going to affect our food choices then too. Because when we get stressed, right? So boredom is a big issue, but when we get stressed, that's when we go for the comfort foods. And I'll let Dr. Cotton explain how all the chemicals work with that. But, we go for what feels good, then we feel guilty or sluggish afterwards, which then perpetuates bad food choices a lot of the time. So it can be a difficult spiral. And that's when alcohol, caffeine, anytime we're not feeling up to par and our mood is dropping or we're feeling stressed, and that's when we rely on those things, which actually just kind of send us on a roller coaster.
Yeah, that spiral that, we feel down, so we hit the sugar high, whether it's the chocolate or the caffeine, to bring us up, and then we're down again. Those spikes could be affecting us in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. So oftentimes what I find is people skip breakfast. That seems to be a really common theme. And then we drink coffee. So now what we've done to our bodies is our blood sugar is dropping because we don't have enough to sustain it. And then we've added caffeine. Both of these things kick our body into fight flight. It releases adrenaline into our body to keep us going, and if you have anxiety already, now you have more anxiety. And then for women especially, this whole thing, when we don't have enough nutrition in our bodies, our women's bodies will borrow their estrogen and make it into more stress hormone, because they need to be properly fueled for our bodies to function appropriately. So then we get in this really big spiral, then we're anxious, then we're hangry, then we reach for the most fatty, nutritious, dense stuff. And it just creates this spiral both mentally and physically.
All right. Maybe when we come back, you mentioned adrenaline. I was thinking adrenaline fatigue syndrome, for instance. We're seeing so much of that impact on the body and what that could be doing because of the adrenaline and producing that fight or flight mentality, all because maybe our foods. Who knew, huh? See, your mama's cooking was good. All right, unless it was... just kidding. Let's pause and take that break. When we come back, more talk today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice. Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
On Monday, government reported 336 new cases of COVID-19 with more than 4,000 active cases on the books, 18 of those in the Sister Islands. Just over 4,600 people were in isolation as of 8 a.m. on Monday, with 22 patients hospitalized. Public Health also reported the death of a 71-year-old COVID-19 patient, bringing local deaths to 3 for the year. In international news, governments are trying to buy time with a rash of new travel restrictions as they figure out the potential impact of Omicron. But the restrictions are being criticized by some officials and medical experts as ineffective and potentially damaging to global coronavirus tracking. The World Health Organization's Regional Office for Africa said Sunday that it stands with African nations and called for borders to remain open as an increasing number of countries around the world impose flight bans from southern African countries. Booster jabs will be offered to everyone who is eligible by the end of January. UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said all adults will be offered a booster jab 3 months after their second dose of the vaccine. Mr. Johnson said jabs would be prioritized according to the age, with the NHS working down the list in 5-year bands, as was done previously. Almost 18 million people in the UK have already had a booster jab. And Adele has announced a Las Vegas residency with weekend performances due to begin in the new year. The singer will perform on Friday and Saturday nights from January 21st until April 16th, 2022. The British star will take 1 weekend off in mid-February. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And if you want to ask a question, we certainly want to invite you to do so. 949-8037, 949-8037. Or if you're like me and my other friends from across the pond who like to have other people pay so they can play, it's a toll-free call, compliments of Flow, 1-800-534-8255. In that pond I met Grapaswamy Pond. Okay, just don't be mistaken. We're talking to Dr. Alexandra Boyd and Dr. Jennifer Cotton from On Course Cayman, and we understand foods affect us, affects our mood, but our moods affect our foods and its choices. We want to ask, in addition to the whole idea of the adrenaline and its impact, and I came across a phrase long ago. I think I understand it slightly. Adrenaline fatigue syndrome. What is that? How does it affect it? But also, we see triggers, or maybe the wrong word, little things. There's an ad for something. Maybe there's a space that makes us associate that with a food. But there are other things within our bodies. So those, I think Dr. Bonner referenced hunger cues. Could we talk about some of those things and the impact of the other neurotransmitters? Dr. Cotton, first, adrenaline fatigue. Is that such a thing?
Yeah. I think that's kind of controversial depending on who you're talking to. I personally, yes, I absolutely believe it's a thing. Mm-hmm. And it can be a whole cycle of I'm maybe restricting food, releasing adrenaline, I'm over caffeinating, releasing adrenaline. Mm-hmm. We get to a point, if we're not sleeping well enough, we're releasing adrenaline and cortisol at night. Mm-hmm. And your body can only keep that up for so long before now you're kicking out adrenaline at random times. You're tired all the time. Nothing you do seems to help. So,
yeah. And that affects you, because then you probably may take a supplement, whatever that is. Then you may decide, well, you know what, let me have a little more coffee. You got a paper due, you got a project, and less sleep, and then that vicious cycle. Mm-hmm. Can we reverse that? How can we address that? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How I personally start in my practice with people is the breakfast, we were talking about. Let's target breakfast. Eat a carb, a protein, a fat within the first hour of waking up. And that's the first piece. If we can balance out our blood sugar at the beginning of the day, then we are much better off than if we start out already in a deficit and then try to fix it later.
Yeah. There are some diets and perhaps some people who subscribe to the notion that don't combine your protein with your vegetable, or don't eat your protein with your fat. Eat them separate. I'm not a dietitian, nutritionist, or any of those things, but I wonder about that sometimes, because at some point they're all going to go into your body, and unless you're like a cow, I've only got one stomach. I eat more. So they're different. There's only one chamber. So they get mixed in there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know but so does it really matter? I'm not sure.
Yeah, if you're talking about being separate on the plate, I don't think that really matters, but you do need to eat them together. If I'm just eating a banana in the morning, now that's carbohydrates purely, it's spiking my blood sugar, give it an hour or two, and then that's going to drop. And now you have my body releasing adrenaline because I now don't have enough nutrition. And so that's part of what it is. So let's say if I eat a banana with a spoonful of peanut butter, now I have the sugar, the carbohydrate, and then I have the protein that evens that out and draws that out instead of getting that spike up and that spike down.
Okay. Relative to protein, think I'm recalling correctly that there are those who subscribe to the notion that, get your protein intake early, like your breakfast heavy in protein, because it'll sustain you through the day. True or false, from your perspective?
I mean, I think as long as you're eating protein at every meal, it doesn't necessarily matter. If you're doing bodybuilding or you're doing some other athletics, it's more important then. But I wouldn't say, like, let's eat 50% of my protein at breakfast. Okay. I don't know that really matters.
Okay. So I guess it's an idea of that consistent, concerted effort to have a balanced, nutritionally balanced meals throughout the time.
Yes, yeah.
What about the notion of certain foods then lead you to be a little bit lethargic after a meal? So I can't have that now because I have to do this.
Sure. Yeah.
That ethnic cleansing. Sorry. Is that a problem?
I mean, like turkey. Yeah, turkey has like tryptophan. I think it's the infamous one. And tryptophan is a precursor, we call it, for serotonin. So it's something our body needs to make serotonin, and a high influx of serotonin makes us tired.
Okay.
So yeah, things like turkey, or if we eat just a lot of carbohydrates all at once, that can make us really tired.
So understanding that, then that may affect us. There are those, for instance, will say, well, have some sort of libation before bed because that makes them rest, when the opposite is actually true. That glass of wine or some other alcoholic beverage isn't making you restful. It's affecting your night's rest, and you don't even realize it. So understanding the foods, this impact, and what is in the foods, the turkey with the tryptophan, for instance, or the turtle with the protein.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And alcohol, yes. Alcohol, although it makes you tired, it really impacts your quality of sleep.
All right. And then, Dr. Cotton, from that notion, as we look at foods, and you reference serotonin, we see certain foods also making us feel good. I say chocolate all the time. Just thinking about dark chocolate with sea salt, makes me feel good. Right? But it triggers certain things and they impact us. How real is that, and how consciously aware do you think we are that we go to those comfort foods when we're feeling that thing?
Yeah, I think it probably depends on the person. I mean, it's very real that we get that flood. Dark chocolate, for example, we get that flood, a little dopamine, a little serotonin, a little endorphin. Dark chocolate hits it all.
More ways than you know.
But I think lots of people, I mean, we kind of know our comfort foods. Maybe we purposely plan for, I'm going to have a stressful day, so I'm going to make this particular meal at night. Maybe some people aren't as aware, though, and then they can kind of get into that mindless eating like Dr. Bodden was talking about.
My mother always said, sit and enjoy your meal. I know some people are probably offended by this, but to me, when you eat, it is the most intimate. You sit, whether it's 2 of you or 20 of you, and you eat, you talk. Turn off the One Eye Monster and just sit and chat, and let that sandwich and glass of water, over conversation extend into the hours, as opposed to wolfing it down. We don't do that. So the digestion is important, as well as the setting of the foods as well.
Yeah.
Oh, who knew? Dr. Cotton, if I then could ask, and we see increasingly ideas of, I guess, fad diets come into play, and they have an impact. But before we get to that, though, we also look at things like probiotics and the like. And, what happens. Now, I'm not going to profess to understand the biology, but we do know that certain foods that we eat affect us in certain ways. There are people with IBS, IBSD, different things. But even in the absence of people with those diagnosed sort of ailments, for want of a better word, we ourselves know that, man, I just ate this thing and it always hurts my stomach. Cues that we should be aware of, what can we do to address those?
Well, I mean, I would say if something just tastes good, but it's not making you feel good, consider not eating it. So
kind of with a person, avoid it. But are there ideas that within the brain and the brain chemistry, the brain and the stomach, there is messaging, there's a link?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the research in the last probably 10 or 15 years has suggested most of our serotonin is in our gut. And so if our gut is not healthy, then our brain is not healthy. And so if you're struggling with IBS or Crohn's or some of the other digestive illnesses, it can definitely impact your brain health and your mental health.
So the gut, I guess, that digestive enzymes and the process is ongoing there as we eat. If that's unhealthy, then that's an indication that the brain itself, there's not a connection.
It can be, yeah.
It's amazing how, again, Dr. Warden, there's this interplay, this interconnectedness between our whole bodies that we don't appreciate, all triggered by the foods, not just the poor nutritional content and values, but the interactions.
Yeah, because if there's problems with the gut, then your body's not going to break it down properly, and even if you are eating healthy foods, it's not going to be able to absorb them. So that's how that can be problematic.
And I wonder to what extent, too, just like mixing certain things, the reactions that they have when you combine them in your bodies. I wonder to what extent, I guess somewhat biology, does the body produce one set of enzymes to digest this and another set to digest that, but they're doing it in tandem. But if our brain isn't properly and nutritionally healthy, that could even make it worse for the symptoms and the signs and that uneasiness increases that we find.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, I think it all interplays with one another. You need to be eating certain foods for certain gut health. Your fermented foods really help with gut health. Your kimchi, your kombucha, drinking vinegars, things like that. But also, if we're stressed out all the time, then in that fight-flight state, we're not getting proper blood to our digestive system. And so then that also affects nutrition. So... You reference vinegars, for instance, and we think back to, again, culturally sensitive, right? Other cultures do it, but we would ingest vinegar here, and even in a meal preparation, but some would do it after a meal because they understood. They didn't necessarily know why, but it was something that worked for them. Limited, maybe just comment on it. Vinegars, particular. It's almost... wow, that's not what I want. But it has a beneficial consequence. Yeah, there's been a lot of studies on different types of vinegars and drinking vinegars, and you can make them more palatable by adding them to water or adding them to some other things. But it's, that natural bacteria that
aids in
the
digestion.
Vinegars that aids in digestion, that helps with gut health.
All right. Final break of this segment. I certainly want to invite you both to share with us, but feed the brain. Are there particular foods and approaches, whether exercise, diet, nutrition, sleep, de-stressing, things that we can do to make the brain healthier, keep the brain healthy, and even now that we can do, going into the Christmas, the gift of life that we're going to give ourselves, that mental wellness, that sharp, acute mind that we want, the agility. Are there things that we can start now? And, do we expect an immediate return or long-term benefits? Can we talk about some of that when we come back? And certainly share more about, maybe serotonin and dopamine and all the other things that we could, if anything, help us be better. Yeah. All right, Dr. Borden and Dr. Cotton, and when we come back, we'll continue that discussion. Stay tuned.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land. Explore your sister islands.
Sometime before 1837, a Mr. William Ryan, a restless traveler from Dublin who had worked in New York, jumped ship in Colombia. He would then go to Jamaica, where he trekked by foot from Kingston to Montego Bay, and somehow found his way to Cayman Brac, where he married the lone daughter of Stephen Foster and Elizabeth Christian, a Miss Sarah Christian. The two had 4 sons and then moved to Roatan, Honduras. Following Ryan's passing, Sarah Ryan went to Belize and then moved her sons back to Cayman Brac and brought with her an impoverished carpenter named William Kirkconnell. The two would later bear a son named Watler Kirkconnell, who went on to establish one of the most prominent Bracker families. Information from this historical vignette was sourced from Founded Upon the Seas, A History of the Cayman Islands and Their People by Michael Creighton and the New History Committee.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land. Explore your sister islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
We may be in Christmas shopping mode, but 'tis the flu season too. Savannah Pharmacy has immune system boosters for the entire family with a range of vitamins and supplements. Their knowledgeable and courteous pharmacists are always available to offer the best advice and products. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
Water Authority Cayman wishes to advise its valued customers that its offices will close early on Friday the 3rd of December for a staff function. In Grand Cayman, cashiers will close at 10:30 a.m. and customer service will close at 11:30 a.m. In Cayman Brac, the cashiers will close at 12 p.m. and water deliveries will stop at 1 p.m. Any truck water orders received before the office closure that are not delivered on Friday will be carried over to Saturday the 4th of December or Monday the 6th of December. Customers in Cayman Brac are encouraged to plan ahead. The Water Authority appreciates the patience and understanding of its customers and do apologize for any inconvenience this may cause.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointments.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for joining us. And thanks to Dr. Alexandra Boyden and Dr. Jennifer Cotton from On Course Cayman. And I think sometimes we appreciate that foods affect us. Maybe we don't necessarily appreciate how much we affect the foods that we eat, in the sense that, you know, get up in the morning or late evening, the person is reaching for caffeine to stay awake. Maybe they feel down and they reach for that particular comfort thing because it gives them a sense of feel good without understanding the biological, the neurological consequences, Dr. Cotton, of it. So in feeding the body, I'm thinking of the athlete who wants to, she wants to get on the Olympic team. And so she's training, day in and day out and getting proper nutrition. But then what about feeding the brain? Is there such a thing? I mean, should we be even concerned about it? Cognizant of what we're doing to the brain, the alcohol, obviously, and other drugs, we can understand the consequences, but, maybe too much of this thing has a negative consequence as well.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, if we're talking about the athlete and she's appropriately feeding her body,
right,
which is, the main piece, then she is probably appropriately feeding her brain.
Okay.
But oftentimes we're not appropriately feeding anything. We're restricting, or we're doing fad diets, or we're doing all sorts of things, and that then affects our brain chemistry.
All right. And you reference intuitive eating, for instance, and I think it works in a sense if you step away. That's what our parents and grandparents did. They sat, they ate. It was a hard day meal. I think of a good Cayman fish dinner. The work to prepare that. You went, you got the fish, you had to clean it, prepare it, got the coconut off the tree, hucked it. So there was a lot of physical exertion in bringing that meal to the table. And then you all sat together, you said grace, you ate, you laughed, and hours went by from preparing it to consuming it. And there was that fellowship. So that was good. But today it's, in the microwave and 2 seconds later, here's your turkey. Something wrong with that picture.
Yeah, we've lost a lot.
So then what do we do given the challenges of cost, convenience, and the like? of bringing those foods and now seeing the increase of, neurological disorders, debilitating diseases of the mind, the unrest, sort of within our spirits, as it were. Potentially, the bad nutrition that we put into our bodies and its impact on the brain. So, how do we make those choices better and informed, in addition to the supplements, but the foods?
Yeah, I mean, I think, bottom line is we're our own experiment. If we eat something and we don't feel good,
don't eat it.
Don't eat it.
Or eat less of it. No.
But I mean, there is no one size fits all for diet. And I think we keep trying in this world to do that. If I do the keto, then I lose weight and somehow I feel amazing because, this person felt amazing. But that's not always true. And oftentimes with nutrition research, especially, it's mostly men they're doing the experiments on. They throw women out of research because our hormones impacts how we digest things. So most of your keto, your intermittent fasting, anything for athletes, it's all done on men.
That's interesting because, as far as I know, you guys correct me, men and women are different.
Yeah.
Not just from Mars and Venus.
Imagine that.
Yeah. And so we see that impact that it has on people. And then the moods as well. I mean, I can imagine you just come from a very stressful exam, or you had a very, very long, exhausting day presenting or preparing. You probably don't want to go into the kitchen. You want the convenience of that thing that was advertised in the commercial that you just pop it out of the freezer and into the, that.
I think that what Dr. Cotton's saying, it's an experiment. I think that's exactly what we do is helping clients to understand, to stop and look at things. I think especially because a lot of people don't want to go straight to medications. Before you get there, you can work with either your therapist or your nutritionist or your GP to get an understanding of how your body is working to start with, right? Which is just keeping track. What are you eating and how are you feeling those days, right? A lot of times we work with hypotheses. So, so if we cut those 10 coffees back to 8, how do you sleep that night? How did you feel at the end of that day, right? When you got up and you had breakfast, how was your energy through the day? It's hypotheses to begin thinking and testing things, because even if you get up and have breakfast, that's great. Hopefully there will be a difference that day.
Yeah.
But over time it will build. But it's hypotheses, and trying things and finding what's going to work for you. Because things like, I love tea. I've got tea in the office now. I love a good black tea.
Yeah.
But, I've got some friends that can't even drink green tea because they are more prone to anxiety, and it activates their anxiety. So I've got, some friends that, if certain ethnicities have difficulties with alcohol. So there's going to be all these different sensitivities and different ways of metabolizing things. So it's going to be figuring out what works for you, but it's just getting to understand it first.
Know thyself.
Before making changes, and then change little things at a time. If you go and cut a whole bunch out, if you give up alcohol and caffeine in 1 week, who knows what the issue was, right? But if you kind of, and you're not going to feel very good. If you've been having caffeine every day, if you've ever tried to quit drinking caffeine, you're going to feel not good. Yeah. I've had friends cut out sugar. Yeah. But so step it back, go easy on yourself, but then learn to pay attention to when you're hungry and what your body's responding to. And then that gives you a good basis. You may want to look at medications as well anyway, and that's always a prerogative. Anytime that's appropriate, we'll discuss that with clients. But I think there's a lot more that we can do with food than people realize.
All right, so as I listen to you, I learned a lot, and there are two immediate things. One is, pay attention to yourself, understand. Be willing now to write it down, understand how this particular food or drink or whatever has affected you. And then secondly, look at it as you would anything. Like you say, the hypothesis. Now, I've done that with myself. I've deliberately, consciously taken sugar out of my diet. If she doesn't mind me acknowledging, Miss Norman and another friend both said, sugar is so addictive, right? And take it out. The first time I did it, it was horrible. I mean, even water tasted bad. Now, everything else tastes a lot sweeter, right?
Yes, yeah.
And so it's good for you, plus health benefits.
Yeah, no, your body adjusts. I never believed I could drink tea without sugar. It takes time, but it can happen. So, so your body adjusts to things.
So we get conditioned in so many ways, but we're not willing to see the impact of these things, huh?
Well, especially the super sweet things, the super salty things that so much of our diets these days consist of. And sodas really blow your taste buds out of the water. So, and that was where I was actually adjusting from soda to tea, trying to cut back on my caffeine intake.
Okay. So, but as you shared that too, I'm wondering. I'm just thinking back to read up on the adrenaline fatigue syndrome, seeing some of the potential, well, just my recollection, signs and symptoms, the forgetfulness, the lack of sleep and being tired, the dark circles around your eyes, the taste and craving for salt, or these are the things. I'm wondering if there are things in your body that are saying to you, hey, this thing is happening because you now either want this thing or you don't want this thing.
Yeah.
And Dr. Cotton?
Yeah. I mean, if we're truly being intuitive, we're truly connected to our bodies will tell us what it needs, and sometimes when we're craving salt, it's because maybe I didn't have enough salt. Maybe I went out for a, 5-mile run and sweat a lot in this humidity, and now I need salt because that's what my body is asking for, But with things like sugar, sugar is like more comfort. My brain wants that because it makes me tired and makes me feel good. It's not necessarily that my brain needs sugar.
My body wants dark chocolate and sea salt right now.
That's probably fine.
That I know. And it's good for us to appreciate that food is about nutrition and fuel, but it's also about long-term health. It's about how it's going to affect our moods and our brains, and then later on how that health of the brain is going to allow us to have a better life. All right. So it's going to be interesting how we approach it. What then should be our takeaways as we go into, lunch for someone, tomorrow's breakfast, Christmas coming up. The other thing I took from you is that don't expect an immediate change and don't necessarily change everything overnight. Right. Start small. So, perhaps with you, Dr. Cotton, sort of.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Start small. Start with, breakfast. Start with one meal. Start with one change. Don't say, now, because of this, I'm going to overhaul every single thing I do. That's going to work for a day or two, and then you're not going to do it anymore. We see diets fail all the time. There's a 98% failure rate with diets because that's the way we try to make change. So we're just starting really small and trusting that over time, that is going to make a big impact in the way you feel.
Well, as I asked Dr. Boyden, for her comments, perhaps to you, Dr. Cotton, people listening now, I think we see eating disorders and we have this negative connotation. But I'm wondering how many of us don't appreciate that we have an eating disorder in terms of that lack of balance in nutrition, that plate that we put together. The fact that we're not eating breakfast, or that we're rushing through lunch in the car, scoffing on something that we don't know if it was the bag or the wrapping that was attached to it, because we're just getting this thing to get us through to the next thing. For those who are, who would benefit from speaking with you, just reach out to you.
Yeah, definitely reach out to, I think any of us, but Encores Cayman. And, we talk oftentimes, yes, there are eating disorders, but there's disordered eating too. And there are all sorts of things that are disordered eating.
Yeah, just like distracted eating, I can see that.
Yeah. Yeah, emotional eating. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, you would have noticed a lot of the disorders we've talked about, anxiety disorders, depressive disorders, they all involve eating and changes in what we're eating and how we're eating and when we're eating. So eating is a big part. Eating and sleep are our two main fuels, so it affects everyone. So I think it can be helpful to have information on that, but I'll also support in managing stress, managing relationships, managing what's going on in our lives as well to help us make better food choices as well. So it really is an interrelationship.
And do it over a consistent, concerted period of time. Don't expect an overnight change. This is not like the one-night sensation. This is lifestyle.
Yeah, we call it practice.
Marathon. Long term.
Yeah, I call it a fishing trip with my brothers, man. You're going to go and no rush to get back. But that's what we should do. No more microwave mentality. We want it overnight. It's about a long-term health and wellness.
Well, and I think focusing on what to eat rather than what not to eat or how you're going to be eating. So
Mm-hmm.
planning more family meals, finding things that you enjoy, trying new foods. I have some friends that started doing the Zest program where they actually have everything come in a box. So, and exactly what you need for the meal. It was like 2.5 pieces of asparagus and it came with 2.5 pieces. I was like, that's attention to detail. And it's brilliant. But it makes it easy, which means that the family's able to cook together more.
Yeah.
So, so that's, focusing on the brain doesn't work very well in the negatives, focusing on what to eat rather than what not to eat. So rather than going no French fries, this is again one of mine, it's more vegetables, right? Rather than no soda, it's more water, right? And that way you can help to focus on the good things. Your Fitbit will even measure your water now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you have to tell it what you drank, but it asked me like 5 times a day now. I don't know what kind of update it did. Who told it I was thirsty? But
I'm thirsty too.
But make it fun. There's lots of tools and gadgets you can have now to make it fun. There's awesome apps to track your macros, which is the fat, the protein, and the carbohydrates. And that's apparently what's missing from a lot of people's diets. And so that is, finding a way to make it fun and sustainable.
Yeah, and not too complicated. If tracking things can lead to a whole different issue. So sometimes that works for people and sometimes not.
Yeah. Well, I like that idea. Be intuitive. Pay attention to your bodies.
Yeah.
For me, if you're fortunate enough to have a good partner that enjoys the kitchen, that would make it good. Whether it's your spouse or your sibling or your child, that meal prep to be fun. I think that's what our Sundays were like before.
Yeah, and it needs to be sustainable. If it's something really overly complicated, it's not sustainable. So whatever is going to work for your lifestyle, make it work for you.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I'm hopeful that we can maybe have these types of discussions again, because I think it shows the overall impact on our health and wellness. And as we go to shop, for our next grocery outing, that we consciously look at and understand, and not just think of it as a, needing to go to the dietitian, as it were, but to a regular physician, a psychologist, the whole complete package of our health. Well, Dr. One, it's always a pleasure.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having us. You can reach us at oncourse.ky or 745-6463. And we're there for therapy. We're also there if you have questions. And of course, there's also, I always talk about the government agencies as well. So if it sounds like you would like help with stress or you're interested in therapy, there's also the government services that are available at 949-8789.
Well, thank you all very much again for accepting this invitation. And I'm hoping that as we listen, that we start to realize that, food is and should be your medicine. Informed, conscious choices about what we're putting into our bodies, not just to fuel them for that next, sort of outing, but sustain us for, 120 years of active living.
Yes.
That's my goal. Right. To our listeners, we're going to pause and take a break, but when we come back, I want you to rejoin us, another segment, as we partner with HSA. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Are you planning a social, an office party, or event over the holiday season? Make the most of your holiday party and leave the catering to Subway. Choose from small and large sandwich platters, double meat wrap platters, and top it off with optional cookie platters for dessert. Or ask about our Subway Box to Go, with the option of a 6-inch or foot-long sandwich, 1 cookie, and 1 bag of chips. Cater your holiday parties with Subway. Visit subway.ky for menu options. Subway, eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
You can now register online to receive a securely verified digital copy of your COVID-19 vaccination status with QR code through the MyHSA patient portal. Sign up is available online and at all HSA locations. All you need is your photo ID showing date of birth and an email address. Visit hsa.ky and click the My HSA patient portal icon to get started.
The technology sector is forecast to be one of the fastest growing industries in the next decade, with more jobs available than skilled people to fill them. Enterprise Cayman is helping to fill this void and grow the next generation of Caymanian innovators, giving young people access to high quality learning experiences with the opportunity to pursue careers in technology and innovation sectors. Learn to code, how product development works, enter professional competitions, access high tech resources, network with special economic zone industry professionals, and much, much more. Visit enterprisecayman.ky to find out more. Brought to you by Cayman Enterprise City.
Each Tuesday and Thursday from 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m.
The Tuesday and Thursday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Optical Outlook. Visit them at their new location in Anderson Square. Telephone 746-2020. Come see the difference with Optical Outlook.
Since 1993, Rotary Central has worked diligently each year to provide quality bus shelters to our community. A traveling convenience to our school children, the elderly, young people going to work, guest workers, and visitors using the public bus. We, Rotary Central, help you, our advertisers, make it happen. Your marketing dollar travels a far way. Positioning your message, your product, your services, your presence in over 83 bus shelters. Every dollar you spend, every advert you place helps to build another bus shelter, providing modest comfort for Cayman travelers. Reserve space now on the only billboard medium in the Cayman Islands. Email rotaryshelters@gmail.com. rotaryshelters@gmail.com. The Bus Shelters, a partner in community convenience. Another inspiration program by Rotary Central Cayman Islands.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us now for the next half hour thereabouts, as long as our wonderful guests have time. In partnership with the Cayman's Red Cross and the Health Services Authority, we have a nurse. Can I still say that? Laura Nice? Yeah, she's still here with us. I can still call you nurse, right?
Yes, of course.
Of course, yeah. The STI and HIV coordinator over at HSA, and joining us by phone remotely is the Deputy Director at the Red Cross, Miss Carolina Ferreira. As we go to the phones first, Carolina. Oh, Carolina. How are you, my dear?
It's been a while, man. How are you?
Listen. I appreciate you, and I appreciate the fact that with you, I know it's never out of sight, out of mind, and you're always doing great work. So thank you for joining us for this discussion.
I appreciate the fact that you were able to accommodate my virtual participation. Hi, Nurse Laura.
Hi, Carolina.
And you and your wonderful colleague and champion in civic engagement, Nurse Laura. Thank you both for coming in, and especially when we talk about World AIDS Day and the idea that I think in the Cayman context, we're having that discussion more openly. People understanding the importance of knowing their status. We're not taking for granted so many things, and thank God we're no longer looking at such stigma and animosity towards one another. So your work has been paying dividends.
Yeah, we just started promoting. I mean, we do free testing all year, but we obviously want to push around the 1st of December, which is tomorrow. And so we've already had emails and calls about people coming out to get the free testing. So people are wanting to protect themselves in a way of knowing their status.
And I think that's important. We see that increasingly we go to our physicians and we ask her, hey, check my cholesterol, we want to know my blood sugar levels and different things. But for some reason, I gather that if the physician says, hey, when was the last time you had a screen test for this? We seem to have a little bit of trepidation.
Yeah, and I think there might also be that people think when they go to the doctor is checking for everything. Okay. And that's not always the case. So they might be checking their liver functions and their kidney and their cholesterol, as you say, their sugar. But STIs are kind of a little bit separate. They can obviously order them if agreed, but it is an opt-in program right now. Okay. So different, I know in the NHS and in other jurisdictions, they do have an opt-out. So if you were going to your doctor, they would put that order in. But here...
It's an opt-in.
It's an opt-in.
I certainly don't want it to get into the financial considerations, but I was only told by one or two people that, hey, if I want that, there's an extra cost.
That's right. Yeah.
And they didn't think about, I'm not in that lifestyle. I not even monogamous.
It's not going to affect me.
Yeah. So I don't need to. So I'm not going to pay that extra buck.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues as well, potentially.
Yep, that's definitely it. And so we want to remove that, and HSA and Red Cross have been partnering for many, many years on it. We did used to really just focus on HIV and syphilis testing as part of the free testing, and now we do the full STI panel.
Okay.
So even though we're focusing on HIV as it's World AIDS Day tomorrow, we do a full package. So that's a urine sample for chlamydia and gonorrhea, a blood sample. It'll be the same amount you would be taking for just HIV as you would be doing for the other STIs that are.
One stop and get it all.
Exactly.
Now, Ms. Carolina, from that perspective then, when we look at that full panel and when we do come to the Red Cross or wherever you're offering that, it's a relatively simple process and certainly absolutely confidential and professional, but whatever it is that we may have that may serve as an impediment to those of us to come in and taking the opportunity, what can you share with us?
I think it's important to realize that for a lot of people, it's that part of the unknown and what does it mean if any of those results come back positive. That I think that ends up sort of being more of a barrier than the actual testing procedures itself. So whether you're having blood drawn or giving a sample of urine and whatnot, I think that the actual tests themselves, even as much as we may not be, people like to get juked and stuff, we don't do needles very well.
I like you saying that. Can you say that again? Getting juked.
But yeah, getting juked. But I think it's important to realize that I think that the greatest barrier really and truly is that the possibility where you realize that you might have a need for it or that you'd want to get it. And I think it's that decision that suddenly makes things very real. And I think it's, that fear that keeps people from possibly acting as soon as they should. But I think it's as important as with anything else, you are going to live sort of in that limbo, right, until you actually have the testing done and get your results back. So it's important, as with anything else, to know sooner rather than later, because whether it is something that is treatable, like chlamydia or syphilis, or if it is something that is manageable, like HIV, you need to know sooner rather than later, so that your health service professionals, like Nurse Laura, like your primary care physician, can ensure that you stay as healthy as possible, and that there are no further complications due to anything. I mean, it's just like we don't talk so much about syphilis now, just because of the fact that we do have the medication, and it's like it's treatable, but we leave something like that long enough and then suddenly goes from one stage to the next, and it becomes increasingly more difficult to deal with as time progresses. So I think it's about kind of getting over that initial hump of that fear of like, oh my goodness, something might be wrong, or I might really actually need this and stuff, which is why we encourage people to get tested regularly, so that it becomes yet another part of your annual checkups, or however often it is that you feel that you need to be having these kinds of checkups, if it's every quarter or twice a year or every month, yeah.
And I think Caroline is right that the first time people come or request a test, it's daunting. And then once they realize it's actually very easy, the testing part, and that could be they go to the lab, we do the orders and for them, or they come to my office. The procedure is very easy, so that then helps them to come back the next year. I get around this time of the year, everyone is coming. They did it last year, they want to do it again, or they did it 6 months ago, depending on their risk, their perceived risk, or what we discuss as their risk. But the first time they come, it's a little bit more nerve-wracking, and then it gets easier when they come back.
I guess the other thing, being informed as to what transpires, even becoming a blood donor, we may think, the needle is, the size of
ginormous.
Yeah.
My needles are not as big as those. So.
No, but, it's getting...
it's getting easier.
There it is. If I may ask, then, in the Cayman context, what sort of things are we doing for those with HIV? And AIDS, and maybe even there's a difference between we put the two together.
Sure. So when we talk about HIV, it stands for human immunodeficiency virus. So working backwards, it's a virus that attacks our immune system, and it only infects humans. AIDS is a progression of the infection of HIV. So if you find out you're HIV positive, we have very good antiretrovirals, because it's a retrovirus, that can make the virus become completely undetectable. So a few years ago, one of the themes for World AIDS Day was U equals U, so undetectable equals untransmittable. So if someone comes in and their viral load, they're newly positive, their viral load is very high, so that could be in the thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions, we start them on medication, and they can, over a period of time, sometimes as quickly as 6 weeks, we can see that virus become undetectable. Doesn't mean that the virus is gone. It's just become to such a low level that they are at little to no risk of transmitting it. So when they did the theme for that year, it was shown that if someone is undetectable, then they're at no risk to anyone they're having sex with. So that was a bit scary and daunting for some people to hear that, but that is great for the individual that's positive, but also for public health in general, because they cannot transmit the virus. But if someone doesn't take medication, they can progress to the AIDS stage. So AIDS scientifically, medically, is defined as they have the virus of HIV, and their immune system becomes so depleted with it, because remember, it attacks our immune system, that it goes below a certain level, and that level we call a CD4 count, a part of your immune system count. And if it's below that level and they have other infections present, then they're counted as having AIDS. But now we see that people can even, maybe they're diagnosed, the first time they're diagnosed, they're actually classified as an AIDS patient, but they get started on the medication and they can, quote unquote, bounce back. Medically, HIV is very easy to treat. We sometimes can give patients one tablet a day. It's more of the mental health aspect, the social aspect of having HIV that has more of an impact on person.
People would probably look at them and avoid them and Now, if I may ask, in the Cayman context, people who are HIV or positive and the treatment is available to them. Free? Yep. How does that work?
So if you are a Caymanian, spouse of Caymanian, or a permanent resident, their treatment for HIV is free of charge. We have the program through the Health Service Authority that provides that antiretroviral free of charge. If you're on a work permit, we all know you have to get tested for HIV. If you are testing positive, we can start you on treatment if your health insurance just provides the coverage for HIV. And we have moved forward, with that, with more and more companies, health insurance companies doing, covering some HIV care. So we have patients who are on work permits that are positive. And as we say, if you live very long and happy, healthy lives, it's part of their general checkup that we do, and they do very well. But I'm sure Carolina can take over a little bit for me on that one.
Yes, Carolina?
No, sure. I think Laura has obviously covered just about everything. So I'm actually surprised, Laura, because you sound so tired.
Oh no!
I feel so bad to hear your voice kind of coming through. So go ahead, Sterling. Throw me some hardballs, and I'll answer them and give her a break.
Thank you. No, as you referenced, Nurse Laura, like you, always energized and enthusiastic, and so industrious in an approach to the passion that you bring to your careers. But with that, because I think in the Cayman context, we fail, especially as Caymanians and taxpayers in particular, to appreciate the resources that we have within the small jurisdiction. Just as an example, Dr. Borden Pryor always, as she did then, referenced the Department of Consular Services and the free service that the government provides through that, relative to our mental health. But the HSA, and in a partnership with the Red Cross, through the testing and through the counseling and So as we look at HIV and AIDS, and we celebrate World AIDS Day tomorrow, from your perspective, as you go about with the education, would you opine as to whether or not our approach from the stigma, the other sort of things, as Nurse Laura talked about, the psychological impact, for instance, we see medically being treated, but that person who's been given the diagnosis, like cancer, like diabetes, like other things, may have to take it on board and say, oh, okay, I need to make some adjustments in my life. That may weigh heavily on them, but what about the rest of us as a community? How are you finding our response, our acceptance, our support, our nurturing, our sort of love, care, and concern for those people?
Well, I think it's one of the things that sort of, as we see sort of happening now, is the fact that, obviously our days have been consumed with COVID, right? All things COVID and whatnot, to the point where there are people like, oh, we've never experienced a pandemic before. Like, actually, we've been living with this pandemic for over, 3 decades. And it's just that the way in which it has impacted our communities has not been to the same extent visibly the way that COVID has, right? So I think it's as we even our failure to acknowledge and see and remember the fact that we've been in this fight when it comes to curbing the spread of HIV for a very, very long time. So, I think in light of that and sort of where we are at now, and, it's this whole idea of addressing not only the general inequalities that we're finding it, but really it's just like we need to be doing a lot more and a lot better when it comes to educating our entire community on aspects of, health and safety and other things along those lines. So I think it's just like, one of the big things that we have been doing over the last 10 or so years, as you know, has also been around, sort of child protection and, child safeguarding, which has its links to HIV and AIDS within the Caribbean as well, because we found that child sexual abuse is a driving factor behind the pandemic within our region. So, and it's just like, so it's important to kind of connect those dots and start, it's like destigmatizing not only the conversation about HIV and AIDS, but to continue to destigmatize, the education and information on sex and sexuality, to empower people, to make it so that it's not such a huge deal to go and get tested, to provide not everyone, but adolescents in particular, with access to services in a way that is accessible to them, and it's appropriate and it's empowering, and it fosters that aspect of, making good choices. So, all of these things kind of need to come together, and it's like, and we talk, it's been, day in or year in, year out, we come in, we talk about World AIDS Day, blah, 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 and then people just more or less forget about it unless they are, living with HIV and AIDS, right? So it's just, we need to, it's one of those things where I don't think that we need to be talking about it from the same way that we did, a decade ago in terms of, oh, this is your life sentence and all of those things and whatnot. But I do think that there is, we need to be more empowering in our messages, but also to acknowledge the fact that, yes, this is something that is in our community. It is something that, it's like is preventable, but should you contract it as well, it doesn't mean that your life is over and all of those things, and it becomes more of like a chronic illness. So I think there are all these aspects that we need to sort of look at and, sort of move towards to ensure that as we're dealing with this, we're addressing the root causes that's making certain people more vulnerable to be exposed to the virus than others, and that we're addressing those root causes, that we're addressing those inequalities, and that we're also empowering all of our people, but certainly our young people, with the necessary information that they need and access to services and things, It's like, so even for us, just in terms of our work has been, so like when it comes to HIV and AIDS and all of that stuff, it suffered tremendous during the last 2 years because, all roads lead to COVID. So, and it's just like, and I think that's part of what we need to address as well, is just like, well, how do we ensure that we are supporting the systems that need to be in place for everyone to continue to have some of these the accesses and that they've been counting on or that they need to, and that we're supporting our our healthcare structure and our frontline workers like Nurse Laura to make sure that everything is more balanced and stuff. So there's a lot more that I think that and quite a bit that I think that we'll be able to learn from, this pandemic in terms of how do we address other things and how do we move towards talking about HIV and AIDS from that context of it being a chronic illness as opposed to, it's sort of being this huge thing, which it still is in, around the world.
Mm-hmm. So are we then, sorry, Nurse Laura?
No, I was just going to say, so Carolina, you need to say what you're doing tomorrow evening.
Yes. So in an effort to educate and empower, we are hosting a free Zoom HIV 101 session, which is basically a very basic introduction to what is HIV, what is AIDS, it's like how does transmission occur, just to kind of get to some of those very basic information, the kind of literally the 101 kind of things that people need to know in order to be able to better understand and protect themselves. And we're going to be doing this from 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. The link, as well as the meeting ID and passcodes, are being shared on our social media pages, the Red Cross, Facebook and Instagram pages, and we've tagged the Health Services Authority, of course, so people can just jump onto that at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. And this is something that we are working on putting on a virtual platform as well, so that more people can access this in their own time in an asynchronous platform, so that they can go through it at their the comfort of their home or in the office when they have some time as well. So that's what we're hoping to do, and have launched by January of next year to really kind of address some of these gaps in education and information.
All right, well, certainly appreciate it. No, Nurse Laura, tomorrow is World AIDS Day as we celebrate it. We see the theme, as Ms. Carolina highlighted, but there's more of a sense of individual responsibility that we bring to the tables. As you sort of wrap up our discussion, what closing thoughts you want to leave with us?
Yeah, just they can email me, laura.elniski, so that's laura.elniski@hsa.ky. I'm kind of in between two roles, so the best way to get me is by email, and we can organize a time that you come in if you have some questions or you want to discuss on the phone, or you just you want to do your regular checkup. We can order that, and you can go to the lab as well. As you say, it's an individual's responsibility. You do get your results back very quickly. HIV results would be back within 24 hours. And then if you're doing the full panel, everything else takes about a week to come back. You can obviously follow up by email and by phone, or come in as well to discuss any of those with us. But the theme this year, is End Inequalities, End AIDS, and End Pandemics. So kind of encompasses all of our work together. As I say, I have great patients, great clients who do very well that they are positive, but obviously they would never want to be positive in the first place. So if we can prevent more infections by giving them the education of the HIV 101 that Carolina is holding, and driving people to go get tested, that's the best thing that we can do, and the individuals can take the next step in protecting themselves. So I appreciate it. Ms. Carolina, any sort of quick final thoughts from you?
Well, I'm hoping that over, like tomorrow, certainly that people will jump on the Zoom meeting, and as we launch the platform to give people access to the HIV 101 training on a regular basis, that they'll do that as well. But certainly, I think it's just, as we come together as a community looking at better ways for us to keep giving these messages out to our young people and everyone else. So I appreciate you giving us the time, Sterling, always, and hopefully I'll see you tomorrow evening.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I certainly appreciate you accepting the invitation, and to you and Nurse Laura, the great work that you continue to do, and hopefully as a people we start to appreciate the responsibility that we have as individuals. So have a wonderful rest of the afternoon, Nurse Laura. Let's go.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, Sterling.
All right. Well, we're going to pause and take a break. Susan can wrap up the news for us at the headlines at 2. When we come back, some open line to sort of round it out. And, well, what are we going to do, Miss Susan? Well, you're going to call her and she's going to tell you. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice. Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Fire crews and Department of Environmental Health staff worked through the night monitoring another fire at the Georgetown landfill. At around 4 p.m. on Monday, 911 sent fire officers to the scene after noting smoke coming from multiple spots in an area 100 yards in diameter. There were no flames visible. CIFS crews spent the night on standby at the landfill in the event of a flare-up. Stay tuned to Radio Cayman as we bring you the very latest. In international news, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Tuesday sternly warned NATO against deploying its troops and weapons to Ukraine, saying it represents a red line for Russia and would trigger a strong response. Commenting on Western concerns about Russia's alleged intention to invade Ukraine, he said that Moscow is equally worried about NATO drills near its borders. A Romanian state-owned aircraft brought 70 passengers from South Africa to Bucharest after concerns about the Omicron variant of the coronavirus led to flight cancellations that left people stranded. Romania's foreign ministry said 46 of the passengers on the flight that landed Tuesday afternoon were Romanian citizens and included members of a professional Romanian rugby team. The remaining passengers were citizens of European Union nations or other countries, the ministry said. And the lead investigator of an alleged attack on Jussie Smollett on Tuesday countered a defense attorney's claims that Chicago police rushed to judgment in the case, saying roughly 24 detectives clocked some 3,000 hours before concluding the ex-Empire actor had staged a hoax. Taking the stand as prosecutors began their case against Smollett, a former Chicago police detective said he initially viewed the actor as a victim of a homophobic and racist attack and that they absolutely didn't rush to judgment. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands, the ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom, the land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Savannah Pharmacy. Shop local and get a head start on your Christmas shopping. For ladies' handbags, clothes, shoes, fragrance, candles, and cosmetics with the newest Farmhouse Fresh line of skincare. For the gentlemen, clothes, shoes, fragrances, gift sets, and toys and games for the kids. Savannah Pharmacy provides you with more than just prescriptions. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs. And convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
More ways to win big this Christmas. The more you watch, listen, and stream your favorite Digicel apps, the more chances you have to win from thousands of prizes. Enter to win the grand prizes of US $10,000 cash, US $5,000 cash, or a Digicel family pack with 4 smartphones and free service for a year. Simply listen to your favorite Christmas carols in D Music, watch movies in Play Go, live sports in SportsMax, or connect with friends in BIP and join BIP Rewards channel for daily prizes. Claim your guaranteed prize every Saturday. Shake to win in the My Digicel app today. Digicel, better together this Christmas.
If you think you might be infected with COVID-19, take these steps to help prevent other people from getting sick. Stay home except to seek medical care. Call your doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a mask. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Schedule a COVID-19 test by visiting hsa.ky. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
At Subway, we caramel a lot about our customers, so we decided to give you 2 treats in one with the new Caramel Apple Cookie. Enjoy cinnamon apples, caramel bits, and salted caramel crunch baked in and topped with a drizzle of caramel-flavored icing. Gooey, crunchy, and yummy. Complete your Subway sandwich, pizza, or salad with the delicious Caramel Apple Cookie or any other cookie flavor and dessert available for limited time at all Subway locations. Subway, eat fresh.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. I know you're thinking, well, it's the end of the month for November, the second day of the week, or in my case, since Saturday is the first day, given how I work Friday, I'm exhausted and I'm glad for the rest that comes, as the sun sets. But we're going to get through the rest of this week, and we want you to be a part of this program as we close it out in the next 24 minutes or thereabouts. Now, dial us up on 949-8037. Toll free with the compliments of flow if you so choose. 1-800-534-8255. Or WhatsApp 925-3261. And if you are like many who have seen the benefit of working from home as an employee, you're even more productive. You're less stressed because you're not engaged in the banter around the water cooler, so to speak. Getting involved with the office politics and gossip, and so you're focusing on your clients and able to serve the job. If you're the employer and seeing how more productive, look at it this way. It doesn't matter if your employees are on the job 10 hours or they're on the job for 4 hours. If what is to be done is being done in that time, it doesn't matter if they're doing it from 8 a.m. to midday, or from midnight to 8 a.m. or 4 a.m. once the work is done in a timely, efficient, competent, accurate way. And I want to say that to share that as we look at the way the world is changing and how so many things have already changed, let's see if we can embrace it. Not always easy for some of us. We are very, very cognizant that we're creatures of habit. Think about when you go to the movies. We used to do that one time ago, remember? Even when we used to go to church, we always like to sit in the same place. And if we were forced to have to sit elsewhere, we felt uncomfortable. We didn't enjoy the service and the sermon or the cinema scene as easily as we did in the past because we were not in our spot. That's where I sit. Well, sometimes maybe what we need to do is consciously decide. Take control of the situation and go sit somewhere else. Now, be mindful of two things. You may get a different perspective, but just like how you were always accustomed to sitting in that same spot, by you moving to another spot, you've displaced somebody else who's going to be upset and go, what are you doing sitting in my seat? I sit all the time. You don't see my name in that chair. And that's even in church, right? So these things happen. The reason why I say that is that as we look at the changes, we may not necessarily be able to embrace them now or at all, but we can endure them. We have the strength. This morning I had the sad occasion of being a part of a funeral, and I told a friend I'll be there to support. And we don't assemble anymore to bury a dead. In some parts of the world, we have to do it virtually now. We can't bury the person virtually. We still have to either, do something to send them off to their final resting place. Now, let's not take for granted the freedoms that are being lost. Let's not ignore that there are many with good intentions and they themselves are being deceived. But let's remain civil, and let's appreciate that we catch more flies with honey. Well, likewise, if we can be civil and respectful, even in the positions of authority, and asking people. It's kind of interesting how we've all volunteered to take the job. We use innocuous terms to invite people, But in doing so, we're doing it because we believe it's the best thing to do. We're doing it responsibly. And so let's respect the choices of those who have made it to do it or not. And let's be civil and sensible as we approach our lives. And as we go into, what is Christmas. For many, we understand why we celebrate. For others, it's all about, the food and the fellowship and all the festivities that come with that. For others, it's a sign of reverence. But understand and appreciate that not everybody subscribes to the same notions. So, again, tolerance, acceptance, respect, and individual responsibilities go a long way. Now, what's on our minds? 949-8037. or the toll-free call with the kind compliments of Flow, 1-800-534-8255. WhatsApp 925-3261. And let's see if we can be minded that the golden rule isn't he who has the goal or he who has the gun that makes the rule. It's, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Some of us probably, take a hard and harsh approach to others because that's how we think, but not even that works. Let's go to the phones. Hey, welcome, good afternoon, thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, Erlen, how are you doing?
Hey. When you think of intelligent people who have good contributions, and Mr. Rankin. Good afternoon, sir.
I just heard you babbling there, so I thought I would throw you a lifeline.
Thank you, my babbling. Okay.
So I heard you talking about cassava cake, and I know. Don't worry, man. I got Radio Cayman on my list of deliveries for cassava cake.
Well, thank you, man. And listen, if it's okay with you, I want to commend you because I believe, like many things, right? We have allowed our culinary traditions to go by the wayside because not enough of us. So you have been a stalwart. You're excellent in the kitchen. You're so good that even Luigi has to acknowledge your brilliance in the kitchen.
Well, when somebody that love their bell as much as Luigi give you a compliment, you know that it's genuine. It's coming from the right place.
Yeah, man. He love you to cook food, man. So there you go. Right?
Yeah, and I was obviously tuning in and listening to all various portions of the show. The young ladies that were on earlier shared a lot of insight and things that I didn't know, especially for food and how you digest food.
Right.
Dude, I can tell you right now, I'll be drinking a teaspoon of vinegar after every meal now.
Well, go right ahead, man.
I mean, to try to get better, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah,
man. But it's those sort of segments that are very beneficial. And
Thank you.
We should have more of those because it's just a matter of awareness and education, right?
Yeah, so. And thank you for sharing that because I think it goes back to the practices of for those of us who were raised by our grandmothers or our aunts or even our mothers who may have been born close to the century before last, right? They have wisdom. They have wisdom, man.
Well, exactly, and certainly, I mean, in times like this where we've all had a forced opportunity of pause to kind of look at things a little bit different. Certainly when it comes to our hygiene, the way we carry ourselves, how we go about, how we socialize, who we socialize with. And this is one of those rare opportunities. I mean, I guess we got to learn to extract the good out of every bad that happens. And obviously human nature, by default, we tend to emphasize more on the bad because I guess it's more interesting, I would say, to some people. But when we look at this whole, as you mentioned in your last couple of words that you said about, people who either take the vaccine, who don't take the vaccine, whatever the choice is, no one should feel lesser than the other person, regardless of the choice they make, especially when it comes to medicine, right? And now we see the variants, we see the different things, and we have to ask ourselves, I mean, come on now, Sterling, we got to be sensible about what we're doing, right? So if we're saying that the current vaccine is not effective to the variants that are out there now, then how can we justify the mandates for the vaccine that is now no longer effective to the variant in which we are afraid of? So, I think that we have to always take a closer look and be careful how we implement things and then force people to do these things, not realizing that it could change at any moment. And the fact that a lot of people have suffered from the private sector mandating vaccines or take this test 3 days a week or go home, I think that in itself is wrong. And I think we all can agree that no one should be victimized from being able to make a livelihood in this country. It's our human right to survive and work for a living and provide for our children or ourselves. So, when we see these sort of things manifesting and no one is actually really doing anything, they're just weathering the storm to see how bad it really gets before we actually react. The reason I call is because I think now that we are seeing how chameleon-like this COVID-19 thing is, every day a different color shows up, and we have to adjust, or we have to not, or for those who choose not to. Now, I read a very interesting stat today, and I don't know the full details. I am doing some research on it to try to get the definitive proof, and it's saying that based on vaccination numbers and the record that they have kept so far, there is only like 240 to 300 people who are not vaccinated in Cayman. Right? Now, I know that sounds pretty amazing, that so many people are vaccinated, but I don't know. This is some stats that I read on some platform, so I'm just doing some investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But hypothetically, let's just say for a second that is the case, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then why are we having such high numbers of transmission and community spread? I mean, it would be a clear consensus at that point that the vaccine obviously isn't stopping anybody from getting it, which I think we all agree on now.
Mm-hmm.
Which then goes all the way back to what we said earlier about having mandates for people to be vaccinated when they when it doesn't prevent you from getting it. Now, my last point that I will make before I hang up, because I know it's at the end of your segment. So our new protocol procedures for borders reopening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I support borders reopening 100%. Is that persons who are fully vaxxed, I don't know if you can term it that anymore, but person who has both jabs are allowed to come into the Cayman Islands without any quarantine period with a clear PCR test, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but a person who's not vaccinated can't even come here unless you're a Caymanian with a clear PCR test. And if you're a Caymanian and you come home and you have a clear PCR test and you're unvaxxed, you have to quarantine for 14 days. Can somebody please give me the logic behind that? Allowing someone who's vaccinated, who can clearly carry the virus and spread it even though they're vaccinated, do not have to quarantine because they have a clear PCR test. But a person who is unvaccinated with a clear PCR test still have to quarantine for 14 days. I think we need to revisit that because, one, it's unethical, it's unfair, and it doesn't make any sense. So that's the point I want to make. And the last fun fact for the day for the food thing is that a lot of people may assume one thing over the other, but do you know that lemons and limes have more sugar than strawberries?
Did not know that.
Ponder that. Anyway, I'll leave you there, Sterling. Always a healthy conversation. But if you ever get an opportunity to thank those two ladies that went earlier for me, tell them thanks. I learned a lot from listening to them.
Well, thank you for sharing that publicly, because I think this is where, as you said, if we listen and we are willing to pay attention to what is being shared, we can come away with things that are helpful. And unfortunately, for many of us, we don't pay attention to the food. We scoff it down, and I use that word deliberately, because that's the lifestyle we are, from A to B, just getting that food in order to have a little bit of energy,
Well, I know one thing Caymanians are tolerant to, and that is food turtle. So,
very partial to it, my friend.
Yeah, well, good one.
Good, man. I'll reach out to you. Hopefully soon we can do that thing, yeah?
All right, man. Cool.
All right, blessings, my friend. Blessings. Well, as we pause, take the final break with Susan, I'll comb my hair. I'm going to come back for the last segment. You go on YouTube, you might even see a handsome fella. I got Joel to put a picture himself. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
We may be in Christmas shopping mode, but 'tis the flu season too. Savannah Pharmacy has immune system boosters for the entire family with a range of vitamins and supplements. Their knowledgeable and courteous pharmacists are always available to offer the best advice and products. Remember, they are always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336.
A friendly holiday reminder. You can WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045. That's 929-5045.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
20 years.
Remember when Crew Road had no median and Linford Pearson was only 2 lanes?
We do.
When Dirty Reeds was down the street?
We do.
We have been there for the Falls, the growth, and the rise. When your body and mind needed to change, Powerhouse Gym has been here. We've skated with you. Your first date, your daughter's first time on skates, your son's first strike. From football to squash, to karate and hockey, to bowling and concerts, and everything in between.
For 20 years,
so much has changed, some for the good and some not so much. Through it all, King Sports Center has been here for you, for Cayman.
King Sports Center, celebrating 20 years as Cayman's home for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
As the community continues to take precautions from COVID-19, it is important to stay prepared for other disasters now that we're in the hurricane season. Here are some post-hurricane safety tips from the Department of Environmental Health. Cistern water designated for the purposes of drinking, cooking, and bathing must be disinfected before use after a hurricane. Simply leave the water for 1 minute after it begins to boil, or to disinfect with bleach, add 3 ounces of chlorine bleach to every 1,000 gallons of water. A residual bleach smell is an indicator that the water has been properly disinfected. For full guidance on post-hurricane safety tips, visit www.deh.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back. And thanks for sharing your thoughts with us as we round out today's discussion. The phone lines are open and available to you if you so choose. 949-8037, 949-8037. Toll free with the compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255. And send your thoughts to us as we invite you to be a part of our discussion. Now, one of our listeners sent through a message, a little bit of food for thought, I guess. Let me read it for you. So a couple of comments or questions to Cayman and to our politicians. Do we realize the dangers of deficit spending? Do we realize with supply chain issues and inflation have knock-on effects here in Cayman and on our quality of life? What projects or programs or capital works projects justify government borrowing over $300 million? Says government needs to stay within its means and not squandering our future and of our children's future. Let's go to the phones. Good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hey, haven't heard from you in a while. How are you today, man?
Man, always on top, man. Rambo speaking. Here. It's starting different. Let's start in era for fast, right?
Yeah, man.
Take my time, bro. No, different. Let's start in the part of the world, right?
Uh-huh.
In the past, the present, and the future. Now, you know, you have the conservative and liberal views, right? Old school. And my new thing for the last six months now, transgender era, going beyond, right? Contemporary era, okay? Generational. Okay, starting with this strong speech now, right? With the budget. Okay. I understand now, right? They have their anchor proposals, right? Their amendments. In the end of the day, it pay off with their accomplishment, right? That will be their repertoire. See? Okay. That's my recollection. Right? That's their submissive, right? They offer that in their proposition. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
And the point I make now, it harks off picking up. Now I call about today, no? This afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. For time immemorial, up to now, right? They're avoiding the topic, right? Generator. Right. They find it as a big anger fear, right? Right? And like I said again, the same predicament over and over, right? And whatever the budget is, right? I understand they have the purpose, which is predetermined to serve it, okay? And I know a certain MP now, right? A high MP. No person that I know he don't want nothing to do with it. I respect him for that one, right? So I read him off on that one. But the others though, I promise I'm the fool. I mean, I know he's a fool now. The others inside it, right? So, like I said again, before you so go on, Sharon.
Yeah.
Go to something. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, man. Go ahead. I was always intrigued by what you share, so go ahead, man.
Yeah, sorry for the interruption.
No, man, that's okay, man. Thank you.
You see a point. Okay, different. Like I said again, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
Time memorial, right? A promise governor fool.
Mm-hmm.
Over and over, right? In other places elsewhere or wherever, right? They put assurance toward the citizen, trust and confidence in the past and proof.
Mm-hmm.
Down here came on now, becoming like being some wonderland, right? Over and over, same predicament, over and over. You see where I'm from?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, most people agree with me, and seldomly disagree. That's the irony of it now.
Yep.
You understand? So,
what are your thoughts? Yeah.
Go ahead.
What are your thoughts? Right, we recognize that we don't have a supreme parliament, subjected to, this oversight. But that aside, we know that as a supreme parliament, it can't be bound by. But in the case of the Cayman context, the government of the day decides to undertake a capital project, maybe borrow, hundreds of millions of dollars or make commitments financially. That subsequent, body of elected people will have to continue paying that debt and deal with those issues. In a sort of informal discussion with someone over the last few weeks, the question was sort of posited. What would be the consequence? Just like when somebody offers up themselves, to guarantee the borrowings of another, should they default, they'll step in and repay. What if the elected body was somehow subjected to a portion of their financial mismanagement? So they decided they're going to borrow hundreds of millions of dollars or tens of millions to do education or healthcare or very, noteworthy projects, but they turn out to be, white elephants and not necessarily the best. Should those parliamentarians somehow be subjected to having to repay that? And if so, would they be more cautious and cognizant of the consequence of what they're proposing?
So give me a minute fast to wrap up now. So like I say, in a project, major project, right? You got focus, contemplate carefully, master plan, long term, benefits, advantage. Right? You curtail the disadvantage. In a position that promise, that fulfillment, right? You got the liability towards it. They feel the repercussion differently. And so, like actually, now, the trade winds island, Leeward Antilles Island, Barbados, right? It called self-determination. You see where I'm from? Like with Prince Charles. So obviously we never for independence. I don't fear nothing. I don't fear my shadow. But still differently. Like I see come from, despite the amendment, right? If it's medical, education, whatever, tourism, its consequences, repercussion, long term. You don't hear about the buts, the excuses, right? My theory is however, about not however, not buts around here. So you got to be careful how you tread. Because like I said again, every parliament, right, at the end of the day, they're going to pay off with their repertoire, their accomplishment, their skills. You see where I'm from? You consider carefully their population, submissively, right, when they execute it down the pipeline. So you don't hear about this and that. The Caymans, they come first, the locals, the Cayman people, they come first. From the get-go. You understand? But you see, people understand that. But some of my things I understand. But that the problem came on. Short term. Now reminded. Right? I know who are amnesia or what. Thomas coming to food sudden. What came on? So then, like, tomorrow the 1st December. And I hope 2022. I hope the government in a run away. And I pray for that, but hope not. Because the UK waters hard, they're hawking. I attack you, I'm telling you. So you have a good day, Bo.
Hey, thank you, Bo. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, man. And as we listen to others, maybe they told to be mindful that we got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. And when those who are speaking share a perspective, let's see what we can take from it. As the caller prior talked about, or earlier guests, Dr. Borden and Dr. Cotton from On Course came on when they're talking about food and its effect on the brain. We don't see sometimes how it's not just immediate, but sadly negative long-term consequences. I'll share this last point from one of our listeners. It says, God forbid we ever devalue the Cayman Islands dollar. The day it is dragged down like our neighboring countries could lead to, 1, the day Cayman turns into a banana republic, and as they say, dog will eat our supper. 2, this money grab by the new government on its face does not look good to a pragmatic person. And finally, why a few months in the first thing they seek is to stuff the kitty with huge amounts of cash. Well, I share that with you to ask. Let us, as a people, be very, very cognizant and conscious of our actions. Sometimes we lie, not just by commission, but by omission. Sometimes it's not just the action, but the inaction that is as telling. And many times we leave that thing that should be done to others when we ourselves should be willing to stand in the gap. We often have heard many, not just politicians, not just people at graduations, quote the great U.S. President John F. Kennedy, ask not what, your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, it's time that we step up and stand in the gap and recognize that if you're not going to offer up a comment that's constructive, start complaining. And if you're not going to be willing to, seek a viable solution, even offer up something in a brainstorming exercise, and then maybe being overly critical isn't helpful. But even when you're criticizing, and we do it with malice and vitriol, it can be helpful. And for those of us on the receiving end of that criticism, we probably don't have as thicker skins as we think. Maybe we expect the politician to be that tough person when in fact they're more fragile than the crystal Ovenkirk report. But understand this: we're human, and unlike humans, we're certainly prone to err. We're certainly prone to misguided and sometimes self-serving endeavors. The question is, are we looking out for the greater good or our own selfish pursuits? Tomorrow we want you to come back. We have good discussions in store relative to Wednesdays and Wednesdays being when the government, through its requisite departments, agencies, ministries and the like, join us. Thursday we have another exceptional discussion, and then Friday as well. And somewhere in there you'll find that there's always good to be had if you're having a good to contribute. Well, I don't know about you, but I want to now begin to realize how much I do enjoy my dark chocolate and sea salt. Christmas is coming. Well, let's see where it goes. It's to feed the brain, it's to nourish the soul, it's to soothe the spirit, and it's to, for many, the words untold. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman. The